With that, we are moving on to our next session. So I'm going to hand over to Lalit for the next panel.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minnie. That was a great opening keynote by Tricentis team. Moving to our first panel of the day, we'll spend 30 minutes discussing the latest trends in AI ML. The panel will be moderated by Helen Yu. Her book, Ascent Your Startup, Conquer the 5 Disconnects to Accelerate Growth, will be released on May 25th. She hosted CXO Spy's talk video podcast with the head of AI and sustainability at Microsoft recently. Helen started her AI journey in 2017, deployed AI at many enterprises, currently serves as advisor at Pipestream, a conversational AI company. Here are a distinguished panelist. Anima Anandkumar is a Bren professor at Caltech and director of ML research at NVIDIA. She's part of the World Economic Forum's expert network. Satya Mallick is the CEO of Opencv. He and his team are on a mission to educate 10 million people in AI in 10 years through open source software, hardware, competitions, and courses. A fun fact about Satya, in 2004, he was a grad student, and Dr. Gray Bradsky, the founder of Opencv, almost convinced him that computer vision has no future beyond academic research. Steve Nouri is a data science leader, an author, academic, and technical leader by profession. He's a member of the Forbes Technology Council. Currently, he works at Australian Computer Society as the head of data science and AI. And last but not least, Sanjeev Agrawal is the president and CEO of LeanTaaS and the co-author of the book, Better Healthcare Through Math. A fun fact about Sanjeev, he was going for his first job in New York, and his fiance back then was in college in Boston. One weekend, they decided to surprise each other, and ended up in each other's apartment in the wrong city. Sanjeev had to drive back 4 hours in the middle of snow. Over to you, Helen.
Thank you, Lalit. What an honor to be with all of you here today. Let's start by talking about a burning question for everybody in the business today. What is really the role of artificial intelligence and machine learning? We have seen AI deployed across a wide spectrum of use cases, solving many business problems, from managing and automating IT infrastructure, learning new insights about customers, identifying and responding to cyber threats, or improving supply chain management process. However, there continues to be challenges when deploying AI at scale. So the topic of our 30-minute panel discussion today is the leading trends in AI and machine learning. We've selected 2 themes today. The first one is ethics and privacy concerns around AI adoption. The second one is workforce automation, how AI has advanced our capability to manage the future of work and drive better sustainability. So some people say that ethics and privacy concerns prevent many organizations from adopting AI. So Satya, as one of the top 30 AI people to follow, could you share your perspective on that?
So I agree with the view that ethics and privacy are very important considerations while building AI systems or while deploying them. And we have seen in the last few years how if you are not careful, these algorithms will enable the biases that we already have, right? It would not lead to a just society. So as far as ethics are concerned, I think other panelists are much more, they have much better experience than me to talk about that issue. But let me talk about privacy. So privacy is a very important concern because it's a one-way street. Once your privacy is lost, you cannot have it back, right? So for example, let's say, people find out about your home address or something like that, then it's a one-way street. It is an information that is very difficult to change. So in AI, we have to be very, very careful about privacy concerns. And at Opencv, we address some of those concerns, not all of those concerns, but some of those concerns by focusing our effort on edge. So edge is not only important for computational purposes. Let's say if you want to deploy something which is real time, it's very difficult to always communicate with the cloud, even though, with 5G and everything, the connectivity has improved. Edge is very important for doing real-time computation. It is also very important for privacy. We don't want data to go to the cloud where some big companies, even though their intentions may be good, but there is, as I said, privacy is a one-way street. You lose it and it never comes back. So we don't want the data to leave the device. It is processed on the device and we just throw it away. So for that, we also came up with Opencv AI Kit, which is an edge device where the computation happens on the device. And not only that, NVIDIA and others also have Jetson, they have Google has Coral. So the world is moving towards edge for privacy. I'll let others speak about ethics.
It's encouraging to see the real life application of that. Thank you. Steve, you have really, not Sanjeev, you wrote this Better Healthcare Through Math. I can't wait to read that, by the way. You also named as the top 100 healthcare entrepreneurs. So anything unique when it comes to healthcare solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, health data is about the most private you can imagine, and that's why all the regulation around HIPAA and SOC 2 that all of us as providers into healthcare of AI and machine learning solutions have to comply with. Personally, look, like in every aspect of life, I believe that you cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can do as much harm as you can do good with the same data. And I'll just give you a simple example. In the interest of time, I'll keep this short. If your clinical data got into the wrong hands and that was used against you as far as getting a job is concerned or your insurance rates are concerned, that's one side of the coin, and there is a real fear of that happening. At the same time, if the same data were used in a named entity recognition model that said you get the right treatment, you get the right dosage, you get to be discharged from a hospital faster if the right treatment was given to you, to me, that's the upside that we cannot forget when thinking about ethics and privacy. So healthcare, and there's, we could spend hours talking about this. There are hundreds of examples where sips of data, not just massive big data, but even the right sips of data can provide a tremendous amount of value to bend the access and cost curves, which is one of the biggest issues I think we face as a country. So while I'll take the provocative view perhaps that it is possible to use data in a very ethical and private way to add value to the world. And in healthcare, that's a petri dish just waiting to happen.
Absolutely. So thank you for adding that perspective, Sanjeev. Steve, you have your, being the head of data science and AI at ACS, you also created your LinkedIn masterclass with 350,000 followers on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear your perspective, the impact, ethics, and privacy on AI adoption for government and education verticals.
Thanks, Len. I totally agree with Sanjeev about the importance of privacy and I guess the ethics for health. And I think education will be probably pretty much similar to health in that regard. I would like to focus on the government a little bit because I think that's going to be a little bit more complex and maybe more controversial. And the notion of AI arms race and AI race, I think, is scary as it sounds. I'm not into conspiracy theory at all, but if you think about the impact, the power, and the accuracy of the AI and data, and if you think about governments using it in a way that they might find it legitimate, and especially totalitarian regimes use it for controlling their own citizens, then that's going to be something that's not easy to, first of all, prevent, secondly, understand. Right now, most of the ethical frameworks are voluntarily to follow. Most of them are not legal binding, and it's, as it says, ethical frameworks. It means that you need to, first of all, be an ethical person or an organization. But that's going to be a little bit complex in terms of the governments. Many of the even democratic governments going to think about their own security of their own citizens, and their sovereignty, national sovereignty, and that will make them to even think about going into some sort of AI race, which might not end up in a really interesting or beneficial result for the humanity. And I'm very, very concerned about this part, but I'm hoping that these kind of conversations will bring up more visibility into the problems that we might face in the near future, and we might prevent the accumulation of that kind of data and profiling of the citizens and the usage of these powerful tools in for the wrong reasons.
Thank you, Steve. Anima, you are a Bren professor at Caltech and also a leading machine learning research at NVIDIA. You have spearhead research in unsupervised AI, deep learning, optimization, and tensor methods. What have you learned from your practical experience as well as research with regard to the impact of ethics and privacy on AI?
Yeah. Thank you, Helen, and all the panelists have made excellent points. So I would first of all add, for the audience who want to learn more about the bias in AI and understand that, Coded Bias is a great documentary. It's now on Netflix, and Joy Buolamwini, Timnit Gebru, Meg Mitchell. I mean, there are amazing researchers who have really brought awareness to the field and to the broader public. So what I would say is, from the research perspective, what really prevents us from addressing this ethical questions is the black box nature of our current neural networks, right? First of all, we've scaled up our models to massive, enormous sizes. We now have trillion parameter language models, and the data that's fed into it just cannot be curated because it's at such massive scale. And that's coming from the internet, and we know how much bias the data is on the internet. Especially forums like Reddit and other social media forums have a lot of toxicity and bias encoded in them. So that's where the difficulty is, right? But like the point that was made earlier, there's two sides to the coin. Language models can also be extremely beneficial in many applications. So how do we, first of all, make such models accessible to researchers, academic researchers? Because right now, this is in the hands of a few big companies. And that's where investing in national AI cloud, like in the US, there is a proposal to do that, increase the availability of computing to academics who can train models in the open and study them. I think that's really important, part of like the transparency aspect of it. And the other aspect is the accountability and testing, right? Like we don't have any testing norms. I mean, even for self-driving cars where, that's the safety critical aspect, right? It boggles my mind that we let these so-called autopilots on the street when they're extremely dangerous. So I think we have to come up with, in certain areas, stricter norms in terms of how to evaluate the models, how to carefully test them. And that itself is also a hard problem, right? What are the scenarios that are acceptable, for a car to be safe? Because, if you make these scenarios known, machine learning model will easily learn on that and work well, right? So how do you kind of keep making sure there's enough diversity so there's no cheating in terms of the model? quickly picking up the test data. So I think that aspect is so important to do more research on testing and evaluation of the models, because so far we've been just creating models and a lot of research energies there. We also need to move that to the testing phase. So I think that's an important aspect of keeping track of like the data that's collected, what kind of biases it has, and look at how the bias propagates as we go through the pipeline in terms of data training and finally testing it. So that's one aspect. The other, in terms of privacy, the other panelists made excellent points. One aspect I want to add is federated learning can be a great way for many different companies or entities to share data without revealing the identity of data. And at the NVIDIA Clara platform for healthcare, we've been very successful in deploying federated learning, for instance, for creating a global COVID model, having lots of hospitals contribute their data while maintaining privacy. So I think building good infrastructure for enabling private learning, I think, is a great future.
That's a perfect segue for our next discussion, the theme of automation, right? Forrester predicts that more than a third of the companies will leverage AI to automate their workforce in this year. So we've seen technology's transformative power in the wake of pandemic make tremendous strides with companies like Microsoft. For example, their Azure technology empowered warehousing employees with cognitive disabilities through conversational AI, and a mixed reality platform that acts as virtual guide to performing a job and a serious task that they might not have otherwise be able to complete on their own. So that being said, I'd love to hear your perspective, Satya. What have you seen out there, how AI drives the sustainability?
Yeah, so it is true, AI is a new technology and it is at such a massive scale. I believe that it is bigger than the internet revolution. It's bigger than the mobile revolution. And we are just at the beginning of this thing. And whenever such big technological tsunami happens, there is a large churn in the market in terms of the workforce gets displaced. And so there is, it's scary and it is exciting at the same time. That's the situation with, there will be jobs lost, no doubt about it. But I also want to focus on the positive aspect of it. I'll give you an example. When we ran Opencv AI competition last year, one of the competitors was a blind person who was actually building assistive technology for the blind. And the winner was actually somebody who built a backpack for blind people who want to cross the streets, navigate through the environment. So you can see that, of course, there will be job loss, but it also enables other people, let's say in this case, blind people, to join in the global workforce, which they were not able to do earlier, right? So it improves the quality of life and also brings other people into the workforce. I'll also give another example, like initially, to do good art right now, you need to be an artist, right? You need to have the skills to create the art first, and that's how we judge good artists right now. But you can imagine that there are Steve Jobs of the world who are not good artists themselves, but they are able to recognize good art when there is it's shown to them. And those people are also very useful. So they are kind of curators of good art. And if AI is creating a lot of art, there could be very sophisticated people with good taste whose job would be to curate this art, right? So I don't ever think of AI as a competition between the machine and humans. I think of them as collaboration between humans and machines. So we will work together to bring new things to humanity.
I totally agree with you. I think AI should be called IA, individual augmentation. Yeah. So that being said, let's roll it to Sanjeev, right? Anything unique when it comes to healthcare solutions?
It's hard to compress everything in 2 minutes, but let me try. Healthcare has a bigger issue. Healthcare doesn't have an issue, I believe, of workforce automation, getting rid of people. I think we are hundreds of thousands of doctors and nurses short in this country relative to what we're going to need in the next 5, 10, 20 years because of an aging population, a population that's living longer, that has more chronic disease. So AI is actually, AI-based tools, ML-based tools, math-based tools are not an option. Efficiency is not an option. It is not a luxury anymore, as it is proven in many other industries. So if you think about breaking down healthcare into the front end and the back end, the patient experience, the clinician experience, and the administration, both of them have massive scale in terms of what can be done and is already happening. So if I'm an individual surgeon, maybe I've seen 500 tumors in my life, but an intelligent AI-driven machine has seen 5 billion. And so to Satya's point, helping me in the moment identify what this might be like and who I might resemble within a particular cohort. Because again, the 500 tumors I may have seen could have been spread across South Asians and people of different descent, all of which have very personalized issues. But if an AI-driven machine has seen 5 billion, can cluster the right patient to augment my capabilities in the moment, that's huge. It's not going to replace me, but it's going to augment what I do. And that's just one example. I talked about, named entity recognition being something we can use, not just for, I'll call it flippant uses like Siri, bring me, put a meeting on my calendar, but much more to say this patient is going through this particular path in their journey through a hospital, and here's the best course of treatment for them. Massively impactful in terms of clinical advances. Now, on the administration side, scheduling in hospitals is completely broken. We have a highly stochastic process of the real demand for care is highly stochastic. Meanwhile, EHRs treat patient appointments as being deterministic. You have a grid and you paint it for an hour that, Steve's going to be seen between 8 and 9 and Anima is going to be seen between 9 and 10. That's how you book tennis courts. That's how you book conference rooms. That's not how you book patient appointments, right? How AI, even simple models, it doesn't have to be neural networks, even simple things like constraint-based optimization, some basic probability theory, right? We can get all kind of lost in the big names, can get to the point where you can level load chairs, where you can get more surgeries. If you think about bin packing and the way UPS and FedEx do it, all simple algorithms applied to an environment where you can treat more patients, get more chemotherapy done, get patients discharged faster by identifying barriers to discharge sooner. These are all real applications that are not going to take anybody's job. They are in fact going to be able to let us do more with less, with the number of doctors and nurses that we have. Otherwise, we're all going to run out of this capability and we'll have to ration care, which is the last thing anybody wants. But I'll wait for my prediction moment to tell you what I think might happen if we don't adopt these kinds of tools.
You're right on, Sanjeev. Steve, what about the government vertical? Anything use case you've seen?
So, yeah, the most important thing that I would like to touch base, because in the previous question, I talked about government a little bit more extensively. This time, I would like to actually answer your question about the education piece, which is very important. And because of this pandemic, people started to using more of the online platforms, and we have seen massive growth in terms of the usage, and also a lot more digital footprint was produced during this particular time, and that is very important for any algorithm, any AI application, because it's highly reliant on data. And what is happening, especially in education, there are a couple of pieces that I think AI will not be able to handle as good as human, which is like the teaching part of it, the human aspect of the relation between a teacher and a student. It might change in the future, very, very long future. But I think at this point, we're still relying on the content that is being produced directly by human. But there are other parts in education that I definitely believe AI is helping and will be more helpful in the near future. And probably the most obvious one will be the exams and assessment piece of the education, which is very important to understand the knowledge gain and also provide some feedback. The other bit would be understanding each individual student, like understanding their traits and their characteristics, and maybe even recommending something more tailored for each student, which is possible using AI, like recommender systems. If you
that's a great point, Steve. We have a few more minutes, 3 minutes to go here. I like to zoom into the future a little bit, right? The future of how we leverage responsible AI to enhance our capability to work, the future of automated business workflow that enables sustainability. So what is your prediction for the future of AI and machine learning, Anima?
Yeah, I think we have a bright future here. We've just gotten started, and there's so many challenges to go from narrow AI, right, where we are training it for a specific goal and specific domain, to broadly generalizable AI, right? And we need that in so many areas. If you think about robotics, how do we make our robots intelligent? Or what we call embodied intelligence, bringing the mind and body together. How do we enable this at scale? You have to train this in simulation, right? You just cannot collect billions of samples in the real world like we've done with, say, images, we've done with gameplay like AlphaGo. We cannot do that with robotics. So we have to harness simulations. We have to be able to go from the simulated world to the real world. And that's a big leap. And how do we design algorithms to do that will be really critical. And the other aspect is trustworthy AI, right? Like privacy and ethical AI we talked about will stem from having the AI having the awareness of the uncertainty around. It should not only make decisions, it should know the uncertainty of making those decisions. Especially in the medical domain, what is the uncertainty of whether this is a tumor or not, for instance, is really crucial. And we currently still don't have systems that can do that well. So how do we have systems that are not just accurate on a very specific validation test or test set we are doing this on, but have all kinds of robustness guarantees, are safe to use, are robust? I think these aspects will become very crucial in future.
Absolutely. Thank you. Satya, what's your prediction for the future? You're on mute.
I think it is one of cautious optimism. The future is bright. Like I said, we are just getting started. And it's not even, the march towards general artificial intelligence. We will be making lives better even without reaching that goal. There are so many interesting things that will be solved using AI. So I'm cautiously optimistic. The caution part is because there are these huge concerns about privacy and ethics.
Thank you. Sanjeev, what's the one thing you want to leave with the audience today?
See, I think the invisible hand comes to play in every business. So for us thinking that somehow we're going to stop the progress of AI or machine learning or what I call advanced statistics at the end of the day, you can shoot me, is not going to happen, right? People are going to develop more and more algorithms. And at least in the world I live in, it's not an option. This is not playing a game and winning go. Mm-hmm. This is not, creating virtual reality for the heck of it. If you don't do this, healthcare is going to go to the way of the banks. There were 17,000 banks in the United States in 1985. There are now 7,000. Why? Because of the internet. Hospitals will go the same way, and the ones who adopt these kinds of tools will survive faster. So that's my dire, but let's see what happens. 20-year prediction.
Thank you. Roll it to you, Steve. One thing you want to leave with the audience.
All right. I would just say that ethical framework and ethics and privacy is going to be the most important thing if we want to make sure that the future of AI is bright, and especially we want to make sure that our democracy is also protected.
Excellent. My prediction is the next panel in the next couple years, I'll have half robot, half human. So we have explored some great topics today with the leading thought leaders. And now it's your turn to dream, innovate, and create the brighter future for the business you lead and the people you serve. So thank you all for having us today. I look forward to seeing all of you again next time.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Helen, for moderating this. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. What an outstanding panel. Really enjoyed the healthy discussion. I wish we had more time, but maybe next time, as Helen said. So over to you, Minnie, for the